This is Yonder Radio, Rural Conversations with National Reach. I am your host, Jared Iwi. We're going to have news in mere moments, but let me tell you what's in store for you. We will have trivia, and we are going to Texas with Anya Patron-Slepian, who reports on the 287G program and what that means for immigration in rural areas. And we're going to go to the Appalachians for a seed swap. And this is going to be some good springtime fun right here on Yonder Radio, featuring now the Daily Yonder news editor, Jan Patalski. Welcome. How you doing, Jan?
I'm doing fine, Jared. How are you?
Good to hear from you. What have you brought us today?
We're starting with GRIST and their report on what some experts call an impending homeowners insurance cost crisis. Because of the climate change and the extreme weather events, many states have seen dramatic increases in the costs of home insurance.
We're already seeing nearly $3,000 per year.
Yes. The average American homeowners insurance bill rose about 12% last year, and that's only predicted to go up even higher. Illinois, for example, saw a 48% rise in the insurance costs since 2023, another 5% projected by the end of 2026. And Georgia saw a 24% rise since 2023, and another 10% projected by the end of 2026.
And from Counterpunch, another punch to rural residents.
Yes, Counterpunch did a report on the ongoing efforts to restructure and cut costs at the U.S. Postal Service. Part of that effort is to eliminate same-day mail pickups from small local post offices. The main regional hubs pick up the post from small spots across the country, postmark it the same day, and move it forward. Well, if you lose that, that means that sometimes if you're sending some sensitive mail like your ballots or your bills, the postmark isn't there, you could get your ballot invalidated or your bills delayed. That change only affects locations more than 50 miles or more from the bigger hubs, which puts rural communities at particularly high risk.
And we have seen the Trump administration pushing to get rid of vote by mail. So this seems to tie in with perhaps that agenda.
Correct. And that's been an effort that's been ongoing for a while. It goes all the way back to Trump's first term. So this is not the first swipe they're taking at the USPS. And just to give folks a perspective on this, during 2024 general election, USPS delivered more than 99 million ballots to and from voters.
Well, going to a story just as big, this is rural healthcare and the purported transformation.
Yes, Healthcare Secretary RFK Jr. and Director of Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, Dr. Mehmet Oz, are touting AI and new technologies as a potential solution to some of rural healthcare's issues and shortcomings. They would like to see a portion of the $50 billion dedicated to transforming rural healthcare as funds dedicated to those new technologies. Some experts worry it's being oversold. Some experts point out that technologies don't even exist, really. Not all of them exist yet.
And I should just direct some attention towards maybe a niche issue. Medical drones are not target practice. Okay, I just need to get that out to some people I know, and so they know. Well, there we go. News editor from the Daily Yonder, bringing us the latest from rural America. Thank you so much, Jan Patalski.
Thanks, Jared.
And now, Daily Yonder reporter Anya Patron-Slepian, she reports on a federal program that allows for collaboration between local law enforcement and federal immigration enforcement. Anya, you were in Texas reporting on the Section 287G program. Tell us what its purpose is.
The Section 287G program has been getting a lot of attention lately. It was initially created 30 years ago as part of the 1996 Illegal Immigration Reform and Responsibility Act. And basically what it does is it allows local, state, and county law enforcement agencies to assist federal immigration agents by deputizing them with limited powers of ICE. The Department of Homeland Security calls it a force multiplier because it means that regular police officers, county sheriffs, all sorts of people who are on the ground doing local law enforcement are now able to enforce immigration, which is normally firmly within the jurisdiction of federal agents.
People are already with us. They're already with us in our heads in this conversation, but I want to ask, why are we talking about it now? It's been around for a couple decades. So we must be seeing a resurgence or perhaps a redefining of this section.
Definitely. It's been a major priority of the Trump administration to expand Section 287G. In 2022, there were only 117 active agreements. Now there are around 1,400, and that number is growing every day. Within that growth, there are two major changes. One is that the Trump administration has reintroduced something called the task force model, which is the most aggressive and also most controversial model of 287G. And what that basically means is that local law enforcement, like a county sheriff, can now detain people for suspected immigration violations as part of their routine, everyday sheriff work. So somebody at a traffic stop, for example, is now eligible to be detained without a warrant. Another major change is that the Department of Homeland Security is now offering to pay for the salaries and benefits of law enforcement officials who are participating in the task force model specifically. Whether or not that is going to work is also sort of an open question because, of course, on the one hand, if you're a rural county that doesn't have a lot of resources, the idea that, hey, maybe all 6 of my sheriff's deputies could now be paid for by DHS, that could make a big difference in a county budget. On the other hand, there's a long history of federal and local partnerships having difficulties, and not the least when it comes to the finances of that. And the task force model is notorious. It was ended by the Obama administration in 2012 after a series of investigations by the Department of Justice into sheriffs in Arizona and some other states revealed that there was a whole lot of racial profiling as well as other abuses in counties that were using the task force model.
Well, immediately I'm thinking of Maricopa County.
Exactly. Yes. Maricopa County is exactly what I'm talking about, that there was a lot of evidence of racial profiling and other justice abuses. The second major change that's happening is that whereas for the last 30 years, this has been an optional agreement that local law enforcement agencies can choose to enter into with ICE, nowadays states like Florida, states like Texas, the state legislatures are now requiring local law enforcement agencies to participate.
Now, I'm from a small county where you have very few people policing a vast amount of land. This sounds like it's more work for people who are already doing a lot of work. How is this working for local police?
Well, that's one of the major concerns that local law enforcement agents have. I mean, if we're talking about especially rural counties, rural law enforcement, like you said, there's very small departments trying to cover a huge area. And the sheriffs that I talked to said, frankly, we have more important things to deal with. There are drug overdoses. There are violent crimes. So something that you're finding is that there are, of course, some county sheriffs, some local law enforcement agents who are very excited about the program and the resources that may be provided as a result of it. But there's also a lot of shrugging of the shoulders saying, well, we're required to participate, but on the ground, what can we actually do? Does that really mean anything for us? And so it's a bit of a mixed bag when it comes down to the county level. And something that has been emphasized to me a lot of times is that some counties are going to take it really seriously and some are not.
There is a phrase you use in the article, which I've heard a lot lately. It erodes public trust. Is that going to be a factor with police and those they are policing? What were you able to discover?
The sheriffs that I spoke to made it a really big point to emphasize that their primary job is to protect lives within their jurisdictions. The erosion of public trust as a result of people being concerned about cooperation with ICE has already had really serious effects. There have been plenty of academic studies that show that the number of 911 calls goes down significantly when there's an ICE presence or when there is cooperation between local law enforcement and immigration enforcement. And what that means is that people who may really need help are afraid to call for help. And that ultimately makes everybody less safe, according to the sheriffs that I talked to.
Now, for the Department of Homeland Security and their goals with this, are they seeing what they hope to, that you've been able to find out?
Well, it's hard to say, and I think that the Department of Homeland Security itself might not be able to answer that question, in part because the record keeping on this has been really spotty. There are reports that are being released, but those reports are more like highlight reels, where they're really making an effort to focus on, these are the people that they have been calling, quote, the worst of the worst. And so all of the encounters highlighted in these reports are dealing with people who have already been convicted of some other violent crime. But we know that that is actually not the majority of the people who are being detained by ICE, and it stands to reason also not the majority of the people who are being detained by the task force model of Section 287G.
That was Anya Patron-Slepian, a reporter here with the Daily Yonder, and you can always get more rural news at dailyyonder.com. I mean, maybe not right away because you're listening now, or you can do both if you have that kind of brain. News, stories, and music. We are finding bands around the country. The music you hear is from Boris McCutcheon.
She's so pretty, it is not funny. She could pass as a...
Boris is in Dixon, New Mexico. And I got to tell you, Boris, when I went to your website, borismc.com, I got this album for free, Cryptobiotic Dirt.
I thought I'd shut that off, actually.
Can you leave it on for our listeners? Like a promotional thing?
Yeah, that's your prize. If you make it to my website, you win that prize.
Incredible. And Boris, you've toured the country. I've learned a lot about you. And you've got the awards, and now you're home building a studio. What is your plan?
That's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to help people. There are some new artists in New Mexico.
Well, this is valuable, I think, for any artist, musical or not. What does this mean for a new artist? What does it mean when they go to your studio to record?
I really want to share what I've learned over the years. I started out, recording on analog tape, and so I know the old school way of doing things. And but I also am getting a degree right now in sound design and music production from Berkeley. at 55.
That's brilliant.
So I understand all the new technologies very well from hanging out with the youngsters at Berkeley.
When you get somebody in your studio and you want them to be the best they can be, what are you telling them?
Yeah, just authenticity and making you sound like you, which gets lost sometimes. It's so easy to forget what you're trying to do when you go into the studio. There's so much technology and so many ways to get lost along the way.
And I think where you live in New Mexico is an amazing area to be inspired.
Absolutely. And they can fly fish when they need a break.
That's incredible. Boris McCutcheon, borismc.com. And that's what we're doing here at Yonder Radio, is amplifying the music around the country. Those acts that are grinding it out with an old van and a dream.
Cryptobiotic dirt, cryptobiotic dirt. She don't like walking on cryptobiotic dirt. She don't like walking on cryptobiotic dirt. Step on some dirt, she hit you where it hurts. She don't like walking on cryptobiotic dirt.
Once again, that was Boris McCutcheon, a musician who lives in New Mexico, and you can find more of his music at borismc.com. Stay right here with Yonder Radio, as we'll have more of Boris's songs later in the episode. And every episode of Yonder Radio ends with rural trivia. And right now, we're on that journey, because we're going to give you our first hint today is this religious order was founded in 1787 and reached its height in the 1840s. Today, the last remaining settlement is in New Gloucester, Maine. There will be more hints. We got 2 more coming, so if you don't have it yet, you still have opportunities to learn as we go. So coming up, we are going to an Appalachian Seed Swap, and we partner with Reveal to talk about a solar program in Montana. And that's all on the way on Yonder Radio. Yes, this is Yonder Radio. You have found the right place, and we greatly appreciate your presence. We have a story here from Donna Kallner. She lives in northern Wisconsin and writes a column for the Daily Yonder called 45 Degrees North. This week, she's here to tell the story of trash in her rural community.
Not that long ago, rural municipalities managed solid waste with open burning and bulldozing. People went to the dump on Saturdays to watch the bears paw through their garbage. Many rural families had a place out back where they dumped their trash. Nowadays, Our taxes cover the operation of a municipal transfer station for garbage and recyclables, but not curbside pickup. In my township, we haul our trash ourselves. That can be challenging for some of our rural elders or even people who work full-time. You need someone able-bodied and available to transport garbage during the transfer station's limited open hours. Without access to the dump, it's not unusual for stuff to just pile up. There's a lot of rural pride in our default response to problems, including garbage accumulation. Pride in the fact that community shows up, except sometimes community can't. For example, a mountain of garbage bags collected outside the garage of a homebound elder. Neighbors were reluctant to offer help in hauling it away. They had concerns that bags containing bio-waste could leak or break during transport. There were also concerns about trash that might contain drug paraphernalia. People who can remove their own trash may have compassion for someone unable to do the same, and yet be stymied in how to resolve the situation. The same can be said for our neighbors who serve in local government. I find it frustrating to hear people gripe about other people's actions and then in the next breath complain about how government infringes on their right to do whatever they want on their own land. And yet, when they torch a debris pile and the fire accidentally spreads, they call 911 and expect a fire department to show up and save their house. Our taxes contribute to giving us better choices than dumping our trash at the edge of our land or on a dead-end road on some dark night. That's community showing up.
That was Donna Colner with 45 Degrees North. And next up, enjoy a part of another song from Boris McCutcheon. This song is called Appleshine.
Apple shine, shine little apple, say you're mine till the end of time. Shine little apple, apple shine. Apple shine. I'll shine you up on my chest, heirloom apples that taste the best. Your eyes are bright as apple skin, one more bite and it'll do me. Apple shine. And we come down from the hill, down to the valley where it's warm and still, where the fruit hangs heavy on the trees, and people take water whenever they please, whenever they please. Climb up a ladder and eat a pear way up there. She says she's plain, but I know she's fair. I'm lost in her branches, I'm lost in her hair, lost in her hair. Apple shine. Climb up a ladder and eat a pear, and after that we'll sit in a chair. We'll sit in a chair where the river bends, press an apple to some till.
Boris McCutcheon bringing a nice stroll through an orchard, real or metaphorical, wherever you want to go with that. A beautiful song from our musician of the week out of Dixon, New Mexico. Next up, we have a piece by Daily Yonder reporter Ilana Newman in collaboration with Reveal, a podcast produced by the Center for Investigative Reporting and PRX. This segment was part of a longer episode about the trickle-down effects of the Trump administration on local communities, and Ilana headed out to Montana to talk to tribal communities about what was lost when a Biden-era grant called Solar for All was cut by the current administration last August. The grant would have built residential solar arrays across the country. Here's Alana on the Rocky Boys Reservation, where some of the very first panels were installed under Solar for All.
I drove here through winding valleys and over grassy hills, and now I'm in a small neighborhood. It smells like smoke from someone's wood stove or a fire pit. The sun's out. It's pretty warm for the end of November. I'm here with Joseph Eagleman. He's in charge of the Chippewa Cree's energy program, which implemented Solar for All here on the reservation.
Usually most of us call these villages. This one's called Queensville. I'd say there's probably about 30 homes over here in this area. Roughly. And we're looking south.
That other voice is Zane Pataxel. He lives nearby, and Joseph hired him to help install a solar array that we're walking up to. It's at the home of a local elder.
Prime spot, there's no trees blocking. So she gets as much benefit as she can with the fixed system.
So we got 20 solar panels.
And then there's 2 batteries on the side of the house.
Getting solar panels like these is a big deal. This home is all electric, as are many others here. Rural areas like this often pay more for electricity simply due to economies of scale. Houses are further apart, and the infrastructure that's needed to reach each home just costs more to build and maintain. Rural electric co-ops are also less likely to have energy efficiency or weatherization programs. So energy bills can run as high as $800 a month, which is a lot for a community with a significant number of people living below the poverty line.
There's people that have multiple families in a single home that have higher energy needs and costs. And with the local power provider increasing rates just recently, it's unfortunate.
Solar for All could have changed that for a lot of families who otherwise could not afford to invest in solar. It would be life-changing for them to see their energy bills plummet or even disappear after receiving free solar panels through this program. Here in the Northern Plains, a coalition of 14 tribes was allocated $135 million. Joseph says the Chippewa Cree's share of that money, $7.6 million, would have built close to 200 solar arrays on the reservation. A number of families were waiting in line, but the only panels that were completed before the funding was cut are the ones we're standing next to. Tell me what it felt like when it was announced that the Solar for All grant was cut.
It was terrible. We were getting ready to really take off.
We were really excited.
I think especially with us being able to show the community what was coming, and it just kind of, it's like a gut punch, really.
To help 192 homes, that's a tremendous help. And being energy independent is what we are striving for. You know, that sovereignty that our people talk about is important to us.
That word, sovereignty, came up a lot in my conversations. Tribal sovereignty is not only about protecting culture and traditions, it's about self-sufficiency. And it's a legal status, protected by the U.S. Constitution. More than a century ago, tribes signed treaties giving up the right to their traditional homelands in exchange for the right to self-govern. But that's easier said than done without the resources to support true independence, which have been systemically removed by the U.S. government. Native Americans are more food insecure and rely on Medicaid at higher rates than their white counterparts. They also often have higher expenses for things including electricity. For Zane, the solar program was a step towards self-sufficiency and a return to traditional values.
Coming from our people, you know, the sun is part of our way of life.
Energy sovereignty really means not to have to outsource. My name is Cody Two Bears. I'm an enrolled member of the Standing Rock Sioux Tribe, founder and CEO of Indigenized Energy.
Indigenized Energy is the nonprofit behind the solar panels that I visited on the Rocky Boys Reservation. Until last August, it was working with the coalition of 14 tribes to implement Solar for All.
My ultimate goal is to work myself out of a job. I want to build so much capacity into these tribes where they don't need indigenized energy.
Cody says the idea for Indigenized Energy came from his experiences in 2016 during the protests over the Dakota Access Pipeline.
Come on, guys! We gotta stop this! Why are we standing and watching?
The movement opposing the pipeline brought thousands of people to the Standing Rock Reservation, fighting to protect clean water. They're chanting Mini Wichoni, which means water is life. At the time of the protests, Cody was on the tribal council for the Standing Rock Sioux. Although the pipeline was built, the whole situation got Cody thinking about the legacy of extraction on Native land.
The more history I actually dug up around energy, this wasn't the only time our people were affected. But our people have been affected many generations before me.
Cody's right. There's a long history of energy extraction on reservations without many benefits flowing to tribal members. So you can have people living very close to things like oil or natural gas wells who get no relief to their energy bills. And energy extraction often contaminates nearby water and soil. This history is what inspired indigenized energy.
We wanted the tribes to be self-determined in an energy way.
That energy independence has always been the goal. Indigenized energy was installing solar panels on reservations like the Northern Cheyenne long before Solar for All began. So when the program was announced, it was a natural partnership. Indigenized energy was one of the first to get panels installed with Solar for All funding. Cody had no reason to think the progress would stop with Donald Trump. Like many presidents before him, Trump talks a lot about energy independence, so the cuts took Cody by surprise.
With the way that this administration has done that was really unacceptable and really was harmful to a lot of not just tribal people that were looking forward to something that was promised to us and that was given to us that was just taken away from us.
That sense of betrayal isn't new to Native communities, but the cuts still disappointed many who hoped for relief from high energy bills. Thomasine Woodenlegs lives on the Northern Cheyenne Reservation in southeastern Montana.
I've worked for the tribe my entire life since I was 14 years old, and I've always survived on my own, been a single parent most of my life, and there's no retirement with the tribe. We just have to rely on our Social Security. And I'm afraid that's not going to cover my heating costs.
What do you expect your Social Security to be?
I'm thinking about maybe $2,200, maybe $2,400. And what worries me about this house is every winter my electricity bill ranges anywhere from $400 to $500 a month.
In her modest house, Thomasine takes care of her 2 grandkids. She worries about leaving her family saddled with high energy costs when she passes down her property. Thomasine applied for solar panels multiple times through different grant programs, but is still waiting.
And then recently I heard that they weren't going to get funded. And I was really, really disappointed because I was really looking forward to that.
I asked the EPA why they cut a program that was already proving itself useful to low-income people. They declined an interview, but responded to a few written questions saying, quote, "The previous administration was more focused on throwing money out the door than spending hard-earned American taxpayer dollars with integrity. The Solar for All program was operating with layers and layers of pass-throughs, each taking their own cut of the money." It's true that there were pass-throughs in the program. But that's the way that grants like this often work, because local recipients don't always have capacity to apply for and administer a program this large. But they usually know what communities need most. Tribes were supposed to get $7.6 million each, leaving about $30 million for organizations like Indigenized Energy to hire people and run the program. But that all went away when Solar for All was defunded. Cody told me that Indigenized Energy laid off around half their staff. One of those people was Danica Brady, the coordinator for the Northern Cheyenne Reservation. Danica is so busy with 2 jobs and her kids, the only time we could meet was at her house at 9 o'clock at night. How are you?
I'm all right.
What was tonight? When I get there, I realize she's still multitasking when she hands me a kitchen knife and asks if I want to help her skin a deer. Look at that guy.
This is your turn. Okay. So we're cutting. Just cut straight down. A little bit meatier.
and then just go straight down.
As we work on the deer, we talk about how frustrated she is. Not even about losing her job, but about the lost opportunity for her tribe. The Northern Cheyenne have very few jobs that aren't working directly with the tribal or federal government or in energy, like the local coal plant. The community desperately needs economic development.
The opportunity to get solar, the opportunity for jobs, training, things like that. I still want to help. Still want to help. I want to see more jobs, more opportunities.
Danica tells me that Solar for All would have created at least 5 jobs on each of the 14 reservations. That might not sound like a lot, but in a place like this, hours away from the closest city, well-paying jobs with training are a big deal.
When the opportunity came up to work and help us get something established, it was huge. People call it progress, but I see it as like going back to what we were taught, but in a new way.
By now, the skin is off the deer, and Danica's carving out the back straps, a tender cut of meat right on the spine. She's going to give it to her auntie.
Oh, yeah. That is a pretty piece of meat. You can feel it.
There is some hope the Solar for All program could be restarted. 4 different lawsuits have been filed in federal court against the Trump administration for ending the program.
Colorado is now joining more than 20 states in suing the Trump administration over the cancellation.
The lawsuits claim that taking away already obligated funds is illegal, and terminating the grant program goes against the contract signed when the program was begun.
Democratic Attorney General Phil Weiser says EPA grants can only be taken back for fraud or waste.
All of the lawsuits are still active. One from Climate United will move into oral arguments in February. Another, from a coalition of 22 states, is seeking an injunction to keep the Solar for All funds available. Back on the reservations, electricity costs continue to rise, without much hope of relief. Hill Country Electric Co-op provides electricity for the Chippewa Cree tribe. They raised their rates in 2024 and will raise them again this year. This is happening for a lot of reasons, including inflation, but they also blamed lost revenue because of Solar for All, even though the program was ending. Joseph Eagleman with the Chippewa Cree says that's all the more reason to push for new funding, to restart the tribal solar program and build solar panels across Indian country.
We're still looking at other avenues. We're not just giving up, so we just got to look somewhere else.
Tell me more about what are you thinking about moving forward?
Looking not just at federal grants, but more philanthropy type.
How much money do you need to do those 200 homes?
The Chippewa Cree tribe share of the award was around $7.6 million. We take it as it comes. Each administration is going to be different. Sometimes it may not suit us, but we just got to do what we got to do.
Cody Two Bears feels similarly. Even after losing half its staff, solar projects continue at Indigenized Energy. It's just going to take longer than expected without the $135 million from Solar for All. In fact, Cody says they've secured private funding and are ready to break ground on a project in Wisconsin on the Menominee Reservation. It was next in line when Solar for All was cut.
This would be the third one that we're deploying through Menominee. We also just got some funding that are approved for the Rosebud Sioux Tribe. So even though the money is not there, we're still finding alternative resources and funding to make these possible, make them feasible.
Part of tribal sovereignty is being able to fix your own problems. Almost everyone I spoke with echoed this sentiment. They said being sovereign means not waiting around to be taken care of by the federal government. It's about getting things done when they need to be done.
You can listen to the full episode, which includes 2 other segments about a local doge in Jacksonville, Florida, and immigration in Idaho, on Reveal. Now, for our second clue, this week's trivia. I hope you got the first clue, because we're moving on to 2. Here it is. This group is known for their quality craftsmanship and for their practice of movement during worship. One more clue. That's coming up, along with us taking a little trip to an Appalachian Seed Swap on the way on Yonder Radio. Well, Yonder Radio returning here. We have your rural conversations with National Reach, and that's what we continue to do with Living Traditions, the segment where we dive into stories about folk and traditional arts in Central Appalachia. This week, the topic is seed saving. It's a practice where gardeners select the seeds from their best crops and then save them over the winter to plant the following spring. Last year, reporter Teresa Collins visited the 13th annual Appalachian Seed Swap in Pikeville, Kentucky. She learned how important seed saving and seed swapping are for maintaining Appalachia's biodiversity and for creating a tasty meal. Here is Teresa with the story.
The cafeteria at Pike County Central High School is typically crowded with hungry students grabbing a bite between classes. But today, the main event is all about seeds. The room was full of vendors. One booth sells jam and baked goods. Another has hand-labeled packets of seeds laid out on a white plastic table. Joyce Pinson and her husband Charlie helped start the Appalachian Seed Swap back in 2011.
We started out the first year with just 4 or 5 tables, and we've grown up to about 40 vendors. We're one of the largest seed-saving swaps east of the Mississippi River.
The story of this seed swap started with a disaster and a cushaw, a type of winter squash.
We had a flood here about 8 or 10 years ago up on Harless Creek, and we nearly lost what is called the Farmer Brown white cushaw.
The Farmer Brown cushaw was a variety cultivated by the Brown family of Harless Creek.
It's something that this community is real proud of, that we have this specific cushaw, and we nearly lost it during the flood. There was only a few seeds left.
That's because the Browns hadn't really shared their cushaw seeds with anyone outside their family. The experience showed the Pinsons how vulnerable their own seed collection was by not sharing them more broadly. And so, the swap was born. To honor this history, each seed swap begins with the ceremonial cutting of the cushaw, where someone cuts open a cushaw and shares the seeds with attendees. Charlie Pinson's the MC this year, and well, there's a little change of plans.
Here we're going to do the cutting of the pumpkin today. All of our cushaws rotted to the red weather.
It apparently wasn't a good year for cushaws. Pinson introduces John Woodworth of Possum Bottom Farm, who does the honors of cutting.
He's been every seed swaps we've had, and he's going to do the ceremonial cutting of the pumpkin, not the cushaw.
Woodworth takes a knife to the round orange gourd, cutting into the scalloped edge of the fruit, and the swap has officially commenced.
And now we'd like to welcome everybody to the seed swap, and have at it, folks.
Neil Hunt co-founded the Appalachian Seed Swap with the Pinsons. He was inspired by his experience tracking down a specific tomato he remembered from childhood.
We just assumed we could go to the grocery store, buy tomato plants, and find them when we wanted. Well, of course, we had no luck finding that.
The tomato in question was an orange beefsteak tomato that was once popular in eastern Kentucky, but over time it became hard to find. Hunt eventually met a 99-year-old man here in Pike County named Cyril Blackburn. He'd been growing that very tomato for 7 decades. Blackburn sent Hunt home with 12 tomato plants that day. Hunt nurtured those plants and began sharing their seeds.
If you look in the seed catalogs, like the heirloom seed catalogs, you'll find the Zero Blackburn tomato, because we took it to some of their seed swaps and we shared the story, and of course you get to name it, and we want to name it after him to honor him for his work in saving it. So the Zero Blackburn tomato is a perfect example of what seed swaps are.
Like the Cyril Blackburn tomato, many of the seeds at the Appalachian Seed Swap are named after the people they came from. Steve Todd of Knoxville, Tennessee is here with a bean seed called the Donald Todd Half Runner.
Donald Todd was my father, and in Morgan County, Tennessee, he started back in the 60s with a commercial half runner bean.
Todd says his father spent 2 decades refining those beans through genetic selection. Anytime he'd find a bean on the plant that was too tough, he'd get rid of it.
He would follow the vine to the ground, and he would cut the vine off, and he did that for 20 years, selecting for all tender beans. After about 20 years, there were no more tough beans in it, and so I continued the tradition.
For John Kuykendall, saving seeds is a way of saving the flavor and genetic diversity of Appalachia. Kuykendall has written a book about seed saving. He regrets how much seed variety has been lost since the industrialization of agriculture.
We've lost so much over the years.
Monoculture prioritizes hardy seeds that often sacrifice flavor and variety for resistance to drought or pesticides. Kuykendall worries about the genetic diversity that's already been lost to industrial agriculture.
As a seed saver, my biggest regret is that we didn't start 150 years ago.
Today, families with kids stroll through the cafeteria. Quakendahl sees these seed exchanges as a way to pass the region's biodiversity to the next generation.
If you just look around this room and you see all these people coming up, a lot of them are young gardeners just getting started, and there's people that want to eat real food. In other words, not a plastic tomato or a bean that just tastes like grass.
That's the best part of heirloom seeds. They grow food that tastes, well, good. Quakendahl's the master gardener at Blackberry Farm, an upscale farm and resorts in East Tennessee. He says you won't find tomatoes on the menu there when they're out of season, and if guests want to know why,
Tomatoes are like Santa Claus. They come once a year, take it and be thankful. The rest of the time they are like plastic and styrofoam.
Quakendahl looks forward to tomato season every year.
My favorite time is tomato sandwich time. That's when you've got to have the Duke's mayonnaise, plain old white bread, slather that with the Duke's mayonnaise, great big slice of tomato or two, and then you've got to stand over the sink because it runs like a waterfall.
Joyce Pinson says these swaps are critical for spreading local seed varieties to other locales away from Appalachia.
If we don't get the seeds out there to somebody else that's not in eastern Kentucky, we might lose them.
This lesson played out in real time at a seed swap a couple years back.
We had had another flood come through, and a woman that had traded seeds with one of our Michigan vendors, she came back looking because she had lost her seeds. And she found them with this fella that she had swapped with. And she just stood there and cried. And that's why it's important to me. Appalachia is underrated in a lot of ways, but we have a really deep diversity of culture and agriculture.
These growers will help sustain that diversity by sowing their safe seeds and enjoying the tasty fruits and vegetables of their labor.
Okay, well, I'm craving a tomato sandwich. As we learned, I will be grateful to wait for tomato season for the absolute best quality. That was Teresa Collins with Living Traditions. Thanks for spreading the word on Appalachian Seed Swaps. The next one in Pikeville will be the first weekend of April, so right around the corner. Now, we are going to journey to Perri Lynch Howard, an artist based in rural Washington who uses her art to tell stories of climate change with a focus on the quiet places. Perri is an interdisciplinary artist working in painting, drawing, sculpture, and what we will be focusing on today, sound. She is a field recording ambassador with Quiet Parks International, and Perri participates in residencies and field recording opportunities all over the place.
There's this Audubon quote that's like my favorite quote ever, which is, "If the bird and the book disagree, believe the bird." Listening is the way that I engage with the landscape. I will always go back to what I've heard to process things. I continually seek out quiet places where our human presence isn't so present, so that I can connect with the essence of place through sound. I live where I live because it's very quiet here. Okanagan County, up here in north central Washington, is almost entirely underneath restricted airspace because of the proximity to the natural world. And then these restrictions on aviation noise, it just creates a beautiful, inspiring landscape that I am learning from all the time. I really feel the change of the seasons, the way they're marked by the bird song coming on, or bird song quieting down. I can hear the Methow River from my home. I can't see it, but I can hear it. I'm sensitive to the water levels there and how fast the river's running and what's going on in that incredibly important aquifer. I also offer sound walks here. I'm starting to offer opportunities for the community to join together in silence and walk single file through these landscapes that we all know so well, but maybe have never listened very closely to. For field recording, I'll put my headphones on and I'll take my mics out into the world and I'll start moving around. I'll start walking quietly. You know, if I'm in a watery landscape, on the paddleboard, but slowly, just kind of like drifting. And I listen through my headphones because the microphones are non-judgmental. In any landscape, we may see something that's absolutely delightful, but sounds maybe not so great. Like a Steller's jay in the Pacific Northwest is a great example of this. Totally gorgeous bird with a really harsh call. We tend to focus on the beauty of things, or we're drawn to the things that we're attracted to, but the microphones don't work that way. The microphones are completely non-judgmental with what we hear. We're generally unaware at how sounds, noises, and interruptions raise our cortisol level, right? Once our cortisol level gets raised, that's when stress begins. And that's not necessarily caused by loud sounds, but it's caused by the onset of sound and then its silencing. What matters is what kinds of sounds and how frequently are sounds arriving and departing from your experience of place. And once people start to pay attention to that, the next sort of set of moves towards preserving quiet in communities really changes. People stop monitoring decibel levels obsessively and instead start to pay much more attention to, oh, it's not that, it's the traffic on the bridge, or it's cars drag racing each other at night. In protecting quiet, there's two ways to go about it. You can go about it spatially, like you can say, this is a quiet zone. And you can work with it temporally, like during these hours, these sounds can't happen. One thing we can do is to think about the ways that we're activating the landscape and when that's happening. The animals flourish in that space of quiet. We flourish in that space of quiet. I really like to encourage people to try to visualize the unseen, help people to become better listeners, help people to use the power of listening to protect the landscapes that they hold dear, to establish a deeper sense of place through listening to the landscape.
Well, thank you, Perri, for that journey into quiet places. Perri is in Twisp, Washington. You can find more from Perri at her website, Perri with an I, lynchhoward.com, where you can also hear the sounds played in this segment. All right, the final hint for our trivia this week. We'll be revealing the answer after this hint, so here we go. This group was the subject of a recent movie musical starring Amanda Seyfried. Do you have your answer in your head? Drum roll, please. Or maybe just wrap your knuckles on some finely crafted carpentry. The answer to today's trivia question is The Shakers. Shakers believe that Jesus returned to Earth in the body of Ann Lee, an English factory worker who came to America in the late 18th century and inspired generations of followers. The Shakers believed in racial and gender equality and awarded all members equal rights. They were also known to buy believers out of slavery. The sect first grew in Manchester, England as an offshoot of Quakerism and were known as Shaking Quakers because of their use of ecstatic dance and intense physical movement during worship. Later, this spontaneous dancing became choreographed. At its height in the 1840s, the Shaker movement had over 6,000 members living in 19 different communities spread across New England, Ohio, and Kentucky. The Shakers lived communally with all property held in common. They also practiced celibacy, with men and women living together as siblings. The Shakers are known for their quality craftsmanship and commitment to peace. Though many imagine the bonnet-wearing Shakers as traditional and conservative, they were early adopters of new, at the time, inventions like cars and electricity. America has always been the site of religious and utopian experimentation, but after nearly 240 years, the story of the Shakers is one of the most enduring. Well, we went ahead and did it again. We took you on another hour of Yonder Radio. We have many more stories to bring to you every week right here. To learn more about us or listen to our podcast, you can simply go to yonderradio.com. Thank you for listening to Yonder Radio, a production of the Center for Rural Strategies, publisher of the Daily Yonder. I'm your host, Jared Iwi. Our editor and producer is Susanna Brown. This episode was also produced by Alana Newman with additional support from Anya Patron-Slepian and Julia Tilton. Our executive producer is Joel Cohen. Thanks to Don Cassell and the Tennessee Sheiks, Steph Gunno and the Lone Tones, Quincy Ponver and Leo Pozell, and Tim Merima for the great music. Yonder Radio, rural conversations with national reach.